All right. Hey guys, we're back here with our Motive podcast, which is a reason for doing something, especially something that is not obvious. Where me and Will are going to talk about something that might be useful to some, maybe not useful to many, but hopefully it's good sound advice, or at least gets you to spark an interest of something that you might not be aware of, or you might not be applying, or you might need to think of differently. Today, we are going to talk about having a budget and what that might look like for you. And I know there's no right or wrong way of doing it, but the budgeting these days is a lot different than maybe how it was when I was a kid. And what does it actually mean? And does anybody even care about budgeting? Is it something that you write down? Is it a software that you use? Is it something in your head? There's a lot of different ways that people can do it. Which is the right way, which is the wrong way, or is there a right or wrong way of doing it? And then what does that mean for you? If you are trying to budget to buy a house or buy another house, um, can you afford it? Does it make sense? Do you even want to do that right now? And then we'll also talk about a few other things. Sound good, Will?
Sounds good. Nobody likes to hear about budgeting because it means you're probably not going to be able to spend what you want to spend or do what you want to do half the time. But
you know who doesn't? Yeah, you know who doesn't want to hear about it is the people that don't do it, because nobody wants to hear about something they don't do,
right?
or they do poorly, right? Like, I don't want to hear about paying off credit cards. If I got a bunch of credit card bill, I might kind of want to know about it, but I don't really want to know about it.
Right.
But yeah, let's talk. Just like, I guess we'll start there. We all do it differently. I'm old school, where I've used software services and stuff like that. I do have my spreadsheets, my Excel spreadsheets, and I used to be more religious about it monthly, and then I kind of look at it quarterly. And I'm also kind of like you too, like, it's in my head, but at the same time of saying that, I know that there's certain things I'm missing in my head that I can't just, especially as you get more stuff. You have
too much to keep track of.
More bills. Like, for me right now, like, I look at my budget and then I'm like, I forget about all the vehicles or toys that we might have that have registrations and extra insurances. And they're always surprises. Like, oh, here's another $1,000 bill for registration. It's like, oh crap, that's $90 a month. I forgot to budget into a monthly expense. And I think you said before we started this, you were saying you kind of do the same thing too, right? You used to be Mr. Budget, and now you kind of have a pretty good idea in your head of what your budget should be.
Right. Yeah, I think most people struggle with it. I compared it to the gym. Is once you know how to work out, once you know your routine, you know the workouts, you know the reps, you know all that stuff, you don't need a trainer. You don't need to keep journaling. But if you don't know those things, if you don't have the experience, yeah, going back to spreadsheets. I know there's a lot of apps now that do it, that you can just plug in figures and it keeps track it pretty easily. So you're going to need help to keep track of those things, because that cup of coffee 5 days a week adds up. This and this, the utility bills go up in the summer. You don't think of that. All those things. So it's too much to keep track of nowadays, especially just how crazy the world is and how expensive everything is. Budgeting is probably one of the better things you can do, regardless if you think you got a grasp on things or not. You probably should be doing it just as a backup, just to keep track of things. So
I like to think of it too as, I always, for me, business, personal, whatever, I always look at the worst case scenario, right? Like, I don't like to be optimistic when it comes to that, because I know there's room for error. And plus, if I am off and I'm too conservative, then I know I will actually have more money or have a better, position afterwards. So sometimes we spend too much time thinking of a budget that we forget how to make money, and that we actually got to, produce in order to follow a budget. So, so there's a lot of different ways of doing it. It kind of, will come into mindset. It comes into everybody's personal situation, where they're at right now. What are they thinking about? What are their goals? What are they driven for? Man, woman, older, younger, we all think a little differently based off of our life, right? So I know people that want to be in a ton of debt because that's what drives them to keep earning. I know people that want no debt and they're driven by other factors. And I know people that are not driven at all to do either one. They're just always worried about the worst case scenario, what's going to happen and the world's going to end, but yet they keep living and they keep moving forward somehow, some way, because that is human nature, that we are always going to do that. We're always going to find a way, right? Let me just write some stuff here of what I think, and then you can tell me if I'm missing stuff or want to change it or whatever too. But when you have, when you're budgeting your money, first off, you got to look at the net, what you actually get, right? So there's a couple ways of looking at it. I just Googled it. If you make $100,000 a year, you're probably taking about $70,000 home, right? So when you're talking 75%, you're making 100,000 and 75% of it, for example. How would you think about it in your mind?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Don't go with gross at all. Taxes and insurance and all the stuff that you're paying.
Divided by 12 equals 43.75. If you're doing that, is that kind of what you would say you're looking at?
Yeah, that's kind of where I would say keep your budget at for the month. So that's a monthly budget, which, wow, you look at yourself there and you say, I'm making $100,000, but back it out to
you're not even making enough to pay rent in most of the cities that we live around. So
that's what you're saying, though. So
I think we should do this two different ways, by the way. Maybe let's look at like how we would budget, and then how a bank will look at your income as well for what you're qualifying for. Most people will tell you want emergency funds, right? Emergency, and then you want short, and then you want long-term, right? So long-term is what you invest in for retirement, right? Which might be, I'm just going to keep it simple, 10%. That's like your retirement. That's the stuff you don't want to touch till you're ready to retire, right? You might put that in 401ks. You might put that in stocks. You might put it in notes, funds, whatever it is, right? 10% goes into short-term savings. That might be buying a house or paying off debt, right? Or buying investment properties or something that's more short-term. And then you always want to have 5%, I think, into your emergency funds, which you should build that up to about a 6-month reserve in my eyes. Some people say 3 months, but if I look at my total debts, we're talking income here, right? If I look at my debts, this is going to get messy, but whatever. What are my debts? How much does it cost for me to live? If it costs me $3,000 to live, I think I should have about $18,000 in my emergency fund, right? If it costs me $10,000 to live, I should have $60,000 in an emergency fund. So I'm going to put away money to get to that amount. And then maybe I could stabilize it and I could move money back around from short, long, or spending or entertainment or whatever.
Let's just say rent's $2,500. Your car payment's $600. Let's start with that. And you got some credit card bills, totaling 400, 500, let's say.
It's called 400, so it's even.
Yeah, it's
credit cards. Even. So you're at 3,500, and you have to eat, and you have insurance, and you have a cell phone, and you have your Netflix account. Where does that all fit in?
I mean, depending on your lifestyle
these days, because I think food these days is like
food's expensive,
$700 to $1,000 a person, almost. It feels like, I don't know.
So let's say $1,500 just for all that stuff you just mentioned: cell phone to food to leisure to insurance, right? Just all the miscellaneous.
Like I just said, registration for that car. I mean, everything else, right? You said 1,500. Okay, so now we're at $5,000.
So that's what I'm saying. $50,000. Yeah, we're already dipping into we're already over budgeted here, right? I mean, as far as just life, living, car. What can we do here? That's what I'm saying.
That's no fun. That's no fun.
This is zero fun. This is no going a trip to Cabo. This is not even a weekend getaway in wherever you're at. So, look, this is people's dilemmas. That's what I was saying. This is why nobody has the funds to have a down payment. This is why no one's saving. This is why no one's paying off their credit card debt, because they're already at $5,000. If we're at 75%, or if we're at our $70,000 net that we had to start with, I mean, we have $800 left for the rest of the month.
And that's even not even going with your 75% rule, right? So
exactly.
I kind of feel like we should have wrote this down before we recorded it, but whatever, we're already doing it. So
no, this is good. How we're like, this is how you would be thinking when you're budgeting, when you're looking at stuff, and you're like, this is what I want to do. Well, this is what I make. This is what I spend. How am I going to do all this? This is like the thought process, right? When you're trying to budget. So, yeah, this is the conundrum right here, right? This is the puzzle.
To me, this is 150% the puzzle or the problem right now, because we're talking about $100,000, and we know a lot of people don't make 100,000. They're making 50 to 80, like teachers and stuff. So that's a big problem here. What are you going to do? You're going to cut this expense. If you can cut that in half, maybe, because you go share a house with somebody or whatever. But that's even hard. Even sharing, I mean, a room rent is $1,000 to $1,500.
Depending on where you live, cell phone, food, insurance, that could be, that's a low ball number. I think that's pretty conservative for a whole month, especially too. So, yeah, it's tough. Look at this budgeting. I think most people are living at $125,000 salary, as far as what they're spending.
The funny part with the budget is that we put the stuff in here like it's a monthly expense, but this isn't really monthly. We forced a monthly expense upon ourselves by having these credit cards. I don't really have to have a car payment if I saved up and I paid it off and paid in full or whatever, right?
So what's our savings right now, just based off the first two biggies? We're at 1,600 right now.
Right. Things that are not going to change that you probably need in this day and age is your cell phone still. You probably still need to eat, I'm guessing. You probably still are going to have insurance.
Let's go back to the first traditional rent and car. That was $3,400 for the car and the rent. And now we're at $1,600. So that's what, $1,800 that we can put towards those credit cards to get that to zero. Right? Is that how we got there to that zero?
So yeah, I mean, you're saving pretty much what, $2,000 almost, $1,900.
But this is what people do. They'll move to that place. They'll do that. They'll start spending more, and they'll go do other things and not pay off the credit cards. Okay, but let's not do that. So I just want to point that out. No more fun.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll take it out of their budget at the top end, and they'll bring it back into the equation later on, right? That's what people do. That's what people do.
We know that statistically people are going to spend within 20% of their earnings, no matter what it is. Savvy people, the most savvy, usually spend 20% less, right? Or 80% of what they actually make, but still within that 20% range. And the not savvy people usually spend 120% of what they make, right? Which falls right into the situation. So the question is, are you disciplined enough to actually be on the savvy part of the spectrum?
Right.
Or are you not disciplined enough where you're going to continue going down this boat? And you're right. If you continue down that road, you don't have many options. Your debt's going to accumulate. Your debt, you pretty much are going to have an option of bankruptcy at some point in your life and having to start over, whether that's next year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, if you don't make changes to what you do.
But buy now, pay later. People put it off till later. They don't think about the long term. On this,
buy now or pay later can be used in a good way or a bad way. If you own an investment property, that's a good debt. If you own something that you are leveraging that makes money, like you run a business and you take a business loan out, that's a good debt, as long as the business pays for it, right?
But let's just go back to this person that just is renting an apartment with another roommate that goes to college that's barely eating sushi off the counter. They're not investing in 6 properties and have
so that's all bad debt.
Well, I'm saying they have all bad debt, right? Exactly. So I think that so this is like you said, I think the hardest point is having that discipline. Discipline is everything for this when it comes down to it. They see their credit cards at zero now, they're like, all right, let's go book a trip to Italy for the summer. And it's like, no. Yeah. So, okay. That's the, and it's not necessarily, I mean, you can't have fun, but I mean, you got a budget in your fun too. So, I mean, that's a discipline too in itself. So,
yeah. And even when in a real budget, there's an entertainment section, there's a movies section, there's a whatever. So you have that in there, you budgeted in there. So I guess what I'm saying, what I would say is get an app, get something, right? If you're not doing it, it's not accurate ahead, or it's not working out for you, then try something different. Write it down. Use mint.com or any of those apps that are out there. Google it,
Get
free
a
budget.
whiteboard for your wall on the wall, at the wall at home or whatever. Yeah,
Whatever
put
it
it on
is,
your
write it
mirror.
out.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because I could look at this and we could write it just by doing what we did right now. We could say, oh, I could take my 5,000, I could cut it down to 3,000. That's almost $2,000 a month. That's almost $24,000 a year that I could put away. Even if I spent an extra $500 on entertainment, I'm still going to save myself $1,500, which is like 18 grand a year, $17,000 a year. Right. So, but you might not know that if we're just talking about it. I still think ultimately you need to get into a game plan of here, and I might be biased if following this, this model, if you will. But I said I might be biased because I know that I didn't follow it a lot, right? Like I used to believe, screw this long-term stuff. I make my own future. I don't need
Right.
that.
Right.
And I've gone through many 401ks or investment things through jobs and choices and stuff like that where I didn't think I needed it. Now looking back, I'm like, yeah, I kind of wish I did that. And then, like I said, we're just usually not disciplined enough to stay consistent. If you want to get ahead, you're going to make sacrifices and you're going to have to do something different or change it up. Because if people keep doing what they're doing right now, then they're going to keep going in the same direction that they're going, that they're trying to avoid, right? It's the same concept with anything in life. If you want different results, you need to do something different. So if you're struggling right now and you keep doing the same crap that you've been doing, then you're going to keep struggling regardless, unless you do something changes. This is an example. It could be changing where you live. Oh, I don't want to. Well, then keep going down the same path. It could be getting a different car. Well, I don't want to. I like my nice Beamer. Well, then wait till that gets repoed and taken away. And I like having credit cards that I have a balance on them. I don't know who you are and why you like that, but you're crazy if you ask me. I'd rather have zero payments and have the leverage and flexibility to use my credit cards, but not rely on them.